Now I'd like to welcome Neil Cowan from the Poverty Alliance. He joined the Poverty Alliance in March 2018, and he is the Senior Policy and Parliamentary Officer there. Before that, he worked in policy and public affairs roles for several charities, most recently the British Red Cross, and he's responsible for leading the Poverty Alliance's policy influencing work at the local Scottish and UK level. So welcome, Neil.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me today. So, yeah, just to introduce myself, my name is Neil Cowan, and I'm Senior Policy and Parliamentary Officer at the Poverty Alliance. And for those who don't know, we're the National Anti-Poverty Network in Scotland, and we work with organisations from across the country, as well as individuals with direct experience of poverty, to campaign for the solutions to poverty. So there's so much to pick up from the three talks that have preceded me, but I'm really conscious that I've only got 5 minutes, so I'm not even going to attempt to cover or address everything that's been discussed, although so much I think chimes with our analysis, and hopefully that comes through in what I have to say. So I suppose my starting point would be to make a very general point, that the title of this webinar is Succeeding Against the Odds, but I think the notion of success is something that's worth reflecting on. Because for the people that we work alongside who are living on low incomes, and for our young people across Scotland growing up in a grip of poverty, success can really be just making it day to day, month to month, being able to pay rent, pay bills, afford the essentials, despite the existence of and in the face of social and economic policies and structures that seem almost designed to make it impossible for them to do that. So we have in this country, for example, a labour market that too often locks people into low paid, insecure work, and this obviously impacts on young people in a number of ways. So if their parents are in low paid, insecure work, then obviously the chances of them growing up in poverty are significantly higher, with all of the consequent impacts that has. And we know that at the moment 65% of children living in poverty in Scotland are in working households, and when they themselves enter the labour market, they'll find that it's a market that too often pushes young people into low paid, insecure work. And it's also a labour market that doesn't reward them the same way as other workers. So given that young people, have to accept lower wages due to the way that our minimum wage laws are designed. And we've seen in the last 9 months how the pandemic has disproportionately impacted young workers, particularly young women, and particularly young Black and minority ethnic people, because their employment is often concentrated in the low paid, insecure sectors that have been most disrupted by the pandemic. And we also have in this country a social security system that, rather than protecting people, especially children and young people from poverty, has acted in the last decade in particular to really just pull and lock people and families into hardship. So, you know, the benefits freeze, the benefit cap, the two-child limit, these are all policies that are almost designed to create hardship and to make it impossible for many families to secure stable and adequate incomes, and which act, I think, in direct opposition to the kind of enabling factors that, as previous speakers have discussed, can help children achieve high educational outcomes, for example. And for us at the Poverty Alliance, I think that really is the crux of how to ensure that children and young people are properly supported to achieve success in however way you want to define it. It's about adequate, secure incomes that can facilitate the kind of peaceful home environments, for example, that Adriana talked about. Because I think there's nothing that will ruin a home environment like poverty or hardship, with all the associated stress and anxiety and pressure that it brings. And there's nothing that will knock the confidence of parents, which Adriana, I think, again highlighted as a key enabling factor, like being unable to pay the rent or to pay the bills or to pay for the essentials that their children need. And just a point on schools. So schools clearly have a big role to play in supporting children and young people from families on low incomes. They can obviously alleviate some of the impacts of poverty. They can help to reduce stigma. They can reduce the cost of the school day to relieve some pressure on families, on households. And they can also obviously form part of the kind of wider support structure or architecture for children and young people, along with things like child and adolescent mental health services that can deliver very individualised interventions for young people that need them. But I think it's important to say that schools can't tackle poverty, and we know that the attainment gap is already pretty much baked in by the time that children start school. And it's only access to a secure, adequate household income that can create the kind of conditions that will allow children and young people to access the same opportunities and options in life, and to allow them the same opportunities to achieve success, again, however that is defined. I think that's probably my 5 minutes almost up, so I think I'll just finish up by, I guess, reiterating that for us, it is the attainment of adequate and secure incomes that is the defining factor in this discussion. And even individual or family or emotional factors are inherently and intrinsically linked to structural ones, like our inadequate social security system and like the way that our labour market is designed. And I think it's therefore the structural factors from a policy perspective that demand our greatest attention. Yeah, I think that's all from me. Yeah, looking forward to the rest of the discussion, and thanks again for inviting me to take part.